Well, hello there. My name is Kathy with Kathy Cares Realty. I am an agent for United Realty Group, and I'm here today with Ben from Weston Title and Escrow. So, how are you, Ben?
I'm good, thank you.
How is everything going in your world?
Everything is very busy right now in the real estate industry, as you well know.
Yes.
So, as a title company, we are flying right now, and there's no complaint, just so
Right.
you know.
It's better to be like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so the reason why I wanted to interview a title company is because as an agent, I find a lot of times, especially first-time home buyers, they have no clue what a title company is. And people hear the term closing costs, but they don't know what that means. What exactly is a title company? Why you need to have one, or else you cannot close.
Mhm.
So I would like to ask you a couple of questions, and so that you can educate all of us in what you specifically do. So the first question is, what is a title company and what is your primary function?
Well, the title company has several responsibilities in a real estate transaction. One of the main responsibilities is a title company clears all title issues, clouds on title, so to speak, so that the title insurer can issue what we call an owner's title insurance policy. We ensure that all the loan documents, if there is a loan, a lot of people have to use loans in order to buy property. So we ensure that all the documents are signed correctly, initial dated in the right place. We record all of the pertinent documents that are associated with the transaction, and those would be the warranty deed or the mortgage,
Right.
or any other recordable documents like a notice of termination, notice of commencement, things like that. And most importantly, we hold escrow, we're an escrow agent, and we fund the transaction. So what we do is we send the seller their net proceeds.
Right.
We send the money off for the lender for the loan amount. We also pay commissions to the realtors.
Right.
So that's
Yes.
kind of important, right?
Yes,
We
it
don't work
is.
for free.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, we wear several hats within the real estate transaction.
So for those who don't know, what is an escrow?
Well, an escrow is a good faith estimate. It seems like when you enter into a contract, the buyer, on the very first page, is responsible for paying an escrow, a certain amount of money that the title company holds in their escrow account in good faith, which
Right.
basically they sign the contract and then they say, look, we're signing this and we're going to put this money into the escrow account, which means, so to speak, we are serious about buying this property.
Right, exactly. What is the title company involvement in public records?
Well, there's a big involvement because what we do is we actually have to go into public records to make sure that we understand the property's ownership and its sellability, right? So we spend a lot of time during the search process
Right.
in public records to make sure that marital status is right, that who's on title with the sellers,
Right.
and then as I alluded to earlier, we record documents in public records like
Right.
warranty deeds. So we spend a lot of time there. That's kind of one of the big roles that we have.
So what is a title search? And I have a couple here: title insurance and title commitment, because these are three different things that are all into play with intersection.
Yeah, let's start, I think, at the beginning with what the title company, one of their main responsibilities, and so what we do is we order three searches typically, and I'll get to the third in a minute. The first thing we do is we order a title search, which is called a title commitment. Now, if Tammy were here, she would say that is the Bible that all title companies work off of, because what a title commitment shows is it shows all of the issues that need to be cleared in order for the title company to issue a title insurance policy, the title underwriter.
Right.
Okay? If there is a mortgage on the property, the mortgage needs to be satisfied in order to sell,
Right.
right? If there is a judgment, for example, we run into this all the time. A fella has a credit card or a hospital bill and it hasn't been paid, and that attaches to the title. That needs to be cleared in order for the underwriter to issue a title insurance policy. Another one that we find all the time would be an IRS tax lien.
Wow.
You know, some people just have past due taxes, and then the IRS issues a lien on the property, and that lien has to be cleared, and the bill has to be paid in order for the property to be sold. The second type of search that we do is called a municipality lien search. Okay, and what a lien search shows us are three things. Number one, it tells us if there are any open permits on this property.
Right.
So was there any work done on the property and that you had a contractor help you with, and did they not close the permit?
Right.
Okay, and we do that all the time, because a lot of times contractors are out there working multiple jobs and they don't get the permits closed in time. So if we are refinancing or selling a property, we will do that for them.
Can you tell us what is title insurance and how does it work?
Well, so when you think about insurance, you think about your car insurance or homeowner's insurance, and you know that type of policy would protect you against things that might happen in the future, like a car accident or a hurricane or a fire. And title insurance works just the opposite. It protects you against things that might have happened to the property in the past, right? And so we talk about, for example, a deed that was recorded incorrectly.
Okay.
Let's say somebody committed fraud and sold a property, the prior owner sold a property, and they didn't have a right to sell the property, right? These kind of things happen. And so, and we run into that, and a title insurance policy would protect you and defend you and pay your costs against lawsuits pertaining to a situation like that. Okay? And so that's why I jokingly say to people, look, if we were buying property in Montana, you know, maybe I wouldn't be so concerned about it, but we live in South Florida. There's a lot going on down here. There's a lot of fraud that happens, not just in our industry, but in others.
Right.
And there are a lot of people that have tried to prepare quitclaim deeds on their own, buy properties without using title companies, you know, where things could have been done incorrectly.
Right.
And now you don't have a clear chain of title from you know the inception all the way to you.
Yes.
And these are situations that have happened. People have, you know, Jeff and I were just talking about this. A title company put the wrong
Legal description.
Yeah, legal description on the mortgage, and so now a mortgage attached to a property erroneously,
Wow,
and that
yes,
person
that's
was
a
paying that mortgage defaulted.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Now, if you don't have an owner's policy, it's your responsibility to fix all that, and it could be costly.
Right.
And more importantly, maybe the lender might not even want to deal with you.
Right.
So, you know, even though it's optional, at Weston Title, we like to think that it's not optional, because it makes sense. You only pay one time
Right.
for this policy, and it's good the entire time that you own this property, and it can be passed on to your heirs. Makes perfect sense.
Of course. So hello again. We're now here with Jeff, General Counsel of Weston Title and Escrow. So how are you, Jeff?
Doing well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us and participating. So I have a couple of other questions following up my previous interview with Ben.
Sure.
And it ties to the title insurance and the whole process of title and what does the buyer pay versus what does the seller pay. So that everyone who's watching, they have a general understanding of the
Of course.
difference.
So what the buyer pays for and what the seller pays for, a lot of it depends on first the contract. So when you're gonna prepare the contract and submit it to the seller, depending on what county you're in, there are certain fees and expenses that are paid by the buyer customarily and some that are paid by the seller.
Right.
And that's usually the title insurance for the owner's policy. If you're in Dade County, if you're in Broward County, usually the buyer would pay for the homeowner's insurance policy, the owner's insurance policy. But if you're in Palm Beach, for instance,
Right.
the seller would pay for that owner's
Mhm.
policy. So it really depends on that. Fees and costs that usually the buyer pays for can be anything doing with the loan, so the lender's policy,
Mhm.
the mortgage fees to record the mortgage, doc stamps for the mortgage itself,
Mhm.
okay, the recording fees for the mortgage.
Yes.
If it's a single family home, they're gonna get a survey, so they'd have to pay for that. They're gonna have to pay for recording of the deed itself, so that's usually like 2 to 3 page deeds, $18.50 to $27 depending on the deed. And those are the major expenses, and obviously a settlement fee for closing costs for the title company itself,
Mhm.
and that can range depending on the transaction. If it's a loan, cash, it all depends. The seller generally pays for what's called the doc stamps on the deed itself, so for the actual sale of the property, whatever that value is, they
Mhm.
pay a portion of that. That's a statutory fee that they pay to the county to record the deed.
Right, okay, great. What is, and this is a general question, but what are the costs of title services? And if you can tell us, I know you mentioned Dade versus Broward
Mhm.
versus West Palm Beach.
I mean, it's all about the same. I mean, each title company is a little bit different, or around the same amount for it. But it's kind of like saying, what kind of car are you buying,
Right.
obviously. There are certain fees, like I mentioned just now before, you're going to have a settlement closing fee that they're going to charge. And it can vary based on the type of transaction, so it's hard to say exactly what those amounts are.
Right,
There are hard costs, obviously, the title company has that they're going to pass on to the buyer or
Mhm.
seller, depending on what those charges are for.
mhm,
For instance, Ben was talking about previously, if you have to order a municipal tax and lien search,
mhm.
usually a third-party company would do that, so we pass the cost on, the hard cost, to the seller to pay for that.
Right,
And then it depends on the municipality and how much they charge
mhm,
for that third-party vendor to order it and prepare that report for us.
mhm.
As far as the survey goes, it's the survey company, estoppels for an HOA. If it's not a delinquent association, you pay $250. If it's delinquent or a rush fee, you may pay up to $350 per association.
Yes,
And those are hard costs at
yes,
that point.
right.
So that's kind of general costs of what it could be.
So the good thing is, for those watching to understand, is that these costs are divided. So buyers are gonna pay, sellers are gonna pay. It's not just one side paying it all. It's always gonna be.
That's correct unless the contract states
Unless
otherwise.
exactly,
I
so
mean, I've had
that's,
instances where a seller agrees to pay for everything.
right,
Or a buyer, because they want to make a seller motivated to sell, especially in this economy right now. Hey, I'm willing to pay for the owner's policy if it's in Palm Beach County to make sure the project gets done and it's less of an expense for the seller. Normally, the seller pays for commissions for real estate agents, which is
Right.
important for you, obviously.
right,
And so, depending on what that amount is, the seller would pay for that. Sometimes there's transaction fees and other costs and expenses that are paid by either side for those process.
right. So that's why it's so important for your realtor to sit down with you, either buyer or seller, and really go review that contract in detail
Correct.
and be careful in what you agree upon, because that's going to affect the whole transaction, specifically now when we're discussing the title side.
And what I can do and suggest to you is, if you want, go to www.westontitle.com, and on the bottom right hand of the screen, we have a little house figure. It says "Get a quote now," and there you get a quick quote to figure out what your closing costs are going to be for either a buyer or seller. And you get to create your own account if you want to, save that quote, and send it back to us. So once you have that contract, we already know what the fees are going to be for the buyer or seller side, depending on what it is. And you're going to see that all up front, so you have a better idea of, okay, this is how much I'm going to need to bring to closing. This is how much for the difference between a loan. Because a lot of times we get questions from realtors saying, hey, can you generate quotes based on a purchase price of $300,000 versus $325,000?
Right,
And what's the difference?
right.
And you can do that on your own if you want to, using
Well, I
our
didn't
website.
know that. I would have thought, because I like to do that a lot
Mhm.
when you're going to speak to someone who's interested in selling
Absolutely. And
their
give them,
property.
hey, here's a potential net sheet for you of what you may be coming up
Exactly.
with. And it's great is because you can do that 24/7.
Exactly, right. So that's really good to know. When you go as a realtor, you go to that potential seller with that, armed with that information, and you have a good understanding of what to do. Can you tell us, and this is a little bit of a loaded question, and I've gotten this before, and sometimes some people have advised me to answer this a certain way, some others say no. So it's a question that I get.
Okay.
A lot of times, couples that are legally married but separated, they want to buy or sell real estate without informing their spouse because they don't want to see each other or talk to each other. What does the Florida law say about this?
Okay. I'm an attorney, so I'm going to say, first of all, this isn't legal advice in your specific situation, but I can give a generality at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The typical attorney response will be, it depends, to be honest with you. Okay. Now, if they're legally married but separated and they haven't been legally divorced yet,
Mm-hmm.
okay, technically, even if the husband buys the property or the wife buys a separate property without advising the other spouse, and let's say they buy it cash, technically it's still a marital asset at that point. It's not. So if they do ever get divorced down the road,
Mm-hmm.
what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the biggest issues that people find out is that in a divorce, you're going to disclose what your assets are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if it's a cash deal and this person's buying it cash, not a problem. I mean, the other spouse technically doesn't have to sign any documents because all you need to sign is essentially the deed. The buyer doesn't even sign the deed. It's just a closing statement at that point, and maybe some other documents that the title company may require.
Mm-hmm.
If they get a loan though, and it's going to be a homestead property potentially, or even an investment property, a lot of times the lender is going to require that the spouse join on the mortgage, even though they're not on the note, not applying for the loan application.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because Florida has a homestead law. So if it's going to be deemed a primary residence for either spouse potentially,
Mm-hmm.
the other spouse has to join in and agree to encumber the property. And that's where a lot of issues come up when they don't find out, or yes, I'm kind of married. Well, no, you're either married or you're not married.
Exactly.
And that becomes a big issue. And a lot of times spouses will say, well, wait a second, I'm not giving my social security number, I'm not applying for it on my credit.
Yes.
We understand that, but unfortunately in Florida, the law requires, because of potential homestead laws, that the other spouse has to agree to at least join in and allowing the mortgage to encumber this property. So in those situations, you're not going to be able to hide it from the other spouse per se. But I don't recommend that also. But yes, you'd have to at least join the mortgage by executing the mortgage, but not necessarily the note. So even if the other spouse decides, hey, I'm going to get this loan for $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
the other spouse is not going to be responsible for that loan, but they still have to agree to sign off on the mortgage at least.
Wow. So I would say that the better thing to do if you're in this situation, just a suggestion, is to get divorced. And then
Get divorced
and
first, you can do
then
that,
try.
or seek legal advice before you get into that
Yes.
situation. That's why it's always good to have an attorney involved in your
Attorney.
transaction, whether you're buying or selling. And then the great thing about Weston Title and Escrow is it's attorney owned and operated.
Okay.
Myself, Roy Oppenheim, and Alan Pulaski, we own Weston Title and Escrow, and also Oppenheim Law, so we're there to help you guys out with your transactions.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for all your knowledge and sharing it with us. So a little bit about Weston Title and Escrow. You really are a great company.
Oh, thank you.
I have nothing but good things to say. I worked with Ben and Tammy, and they're really excellent. And I just have nothing but good things to say about them. And I love that you have that, what you just explained, to go to your website and look into to create an account.
Mhm.
So that's really good. So you're great guys.
Thank you. If you guys have any questions, make sure you go to www.westontitle.com or call us at 954-384-6168.
Thank you so much. So this was Kathy with Kathy Cares Realty. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we're going to have other interviews with some other people that are very knowledgeable in real estate transactions. Okay, take care. Blessings.